The NFL offseason is upon us. Is Deebo Samuel on the trade block? We're going to get into that and a lot more on tonight's Jack Hammer Show. Everybody, it's Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Hope you're all doing well tonight. Wanted to come on and do a little breakdown. We're going to have of what's been going on recently with the 49ers. We'll take some of your calls as well. We'll be here for about an hour tonight. Couple of topics. Started off with the Deebo Samuel news that was came out yesterday. We saw the first discussions of that. We are into the off season now for the 49ers. In the off season of the racing season, they call that the silly season because you have all the rumors and different discussions that are going on, things that most likely aren't going to come true. And that's kind of where we are right now with the NFL season, where the silly season is upon us. Certain things such as the possibility of trading Deebo Samuel from the 49ers don't make a whole lot of sense right now. That actually started off as a result of something that came out of New England. And according to the report there, the Patriots may be sniffing around on wide receiver Deebo Samuel this offseason. It would cost them a lot to pick him up, but it would be a massive hit for Mac Jones heading into year 3. Couple of things on that really quick, and then I have a call that I'm going to get to. But this makes no sense. Makes no sense. Even the original tweet makes no sense without even having to dig any deeper into it. Of course, adding a receiver like Deebo Samuel to the New England Patriots would help out Mac Jones as he goes into year 3. Doesn't it also make sense that having Deebo Samuel as a member of the 49ers would be massive for whoever it is at quarterback for the 49ers, whether it's going to be Trey Lance going into year 3 himself, having made only 4 NFL starts? It would seem like having a receiver like Deebo Samuel would actually help out Trey Lance even more. Or if it's not Trey Lance and Brock Purdy's able to come back and he's healthy and he beats out Trey Lance and he becomes the starter going into 2023, it would having Deebo Samuel around would help out Brock Purdy as well. So just that it just doesn't make sense from that standpoint. And then you go and dig into it a little bit deeper and you look at the numbers and what a trade of Deebo Samuel would mean to the 49ers salary cap wise. If the 49ers were to move Deebo Samuel this offseason in a trade, it would cost them $35.228 million in dead cap space. They would have a negative cap hit of $26.574 million for a player not on their roster. There's nobody and no draft pick that the New England Patriots or any other team can give the 49ers for Deebo Samuel that would make that cap hit worth it for the 49ers. So Deebo Samuel, forget that rumor. He will be a wide receiver with the 49ers coming up to this season. So just wanted to shout out. There's over in the comment section, Maximiliano says, hi, Jack. He's a member of the Toolbox. I wanted to make sure that I put that out there really quick. Hope you're doing well, Maximiliano. And then KW2421 says, yeah, let's draft some first-round picks that may or may not bust rather than keep the guy who we already know is a stud. It's just clickbait. Hey, it's like I said, that's why I put that out there right at the beginning. It's silly season. You kind of throw these things up against the board. You see what sticks. Most of them's not. Most of it will just slide right down. But, it's a fun discussion. So do have a caller that I'm going to bring on. If there's anybody over in the comment section we have something going on as far as the 49ers, a question you want to ask or something you want to get off your chest with regards to the 49ers, hit me up and we'll definitely get to it. Korean 49er, hopefully you're ready to go here. Are you there?
How you doing, Jack?
I'm good. How are you?
We're getting 7 inches of snow where I'm at in northern Illinois, so it's still winter up here.
Yeah, it is. It's still it's cold here in California right now, at least in the valley.
Yeah.
So we're not getting any snow though.
I hear Los Angeles gets snow once every 8 to 10 years. I've always heard that sometime in February.
Yeah, well, they definitely get it up in the mountains or just outside of LA. You can see it from the mountains, even from LA, downtown LA. So I know that they get mountain snow up there. So it wouldn't surprise me if they get it once every, like you said, about once a decade.
Yep. Several points I want to talk to you about. I talked to Grant and Jesse about several
Okay.
points for this upcoming off season. One of my first points will be to plan for next season. They need to find a rush end opposite of Bosa.
Yes.
I think that should be one of the higher priorities. I can't ask Bosa to be a 20 sack man every season. That's just not going to happen. That's not possible.
Right. I agree.
It's,
I agree with you on that one. They need that rusher on the opposite side there.
one other thing I think they really need is I can't count on Kinlaw, and it's not all his fault that they drafted him where they did, and he has a bad knee. I would at least try to get Darren Payne because I liked him in that draft where they got McGlinchey. I thought he was a little bit better of a prospect because he could definitely take up two blockers and help out that defensive line.
Mm-hmm. Payne is one of them. They also remember they're going to get to Kalia Davis this year. We're not sure what he looks like, and we'll see what he can do because he's a pretty athletic guy, a little undersized, but depending on where he is health wise, he might be somebody that's going to be able to help them. But a guy like Deron Payne as your one big money free agent, I could see that happening. I don't think the Flyers are going to spend big money on multiple free agents, but I could see them splurging for one, and that would be a good pickup for them, I think.
Yep. Another thing, two players I would consider not retaining. Well, you already know one of them is Jimmy. If another team wants to give him a big money contract, Jimmy, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We wish you well.
Yes.
The other one I see is Mike McGlinchey because he's in the Lakin Tomlinson situation this upcoming offseason where most articles are saying he's one of the top offensive line free agents, even for right tackle. So if another team wants to give him $15 million, I say that's a little too rich for the 49ers.
Yeah, and I could be wrong here. I push back a little bit on that one because that's something that I've heard a number of people say, and some of the folks I'm hearing say this have been around doing this a lot longer than I have. So maybe I should defer to them instead of thinking the opposite. But I don't, I think when you look at the 49ers and a guy like Mike McGlinchey, the position that he plays, I think that their tackles they wouldn't mind going a little bit above for it. I don't see them wanting to spend big money in the center of their offensive line. It's kind of the same thing that they do on the defensive line too. That's where a guy like Deron Payne, it would be interesting to see them throw big money at a defensive tackle because they haven't done it really yet, other than Eric Armstead. So I think I could see them giving McGlinchey a $15-16 million contract. If they were to do that, I wouldn't complain about it. I think it would be a good move for them. It keeps them with their best offensive line possible. Anybody else, I think, will be a step back, at least in year one.
That's true. I'm not, if they draft a rookie and he fills the right tackle spot, yeah, we have to expect there to be a few bumps along the road. I mean, that's just the way it is. Unless you're getting a prime Anthony Munoz or someone like that who could, a plug and play kind of player. Not all rookies are add water instant player.
Absolutely. And first of all, we know that along the Flyers offensive line already, right? And Aaron Banks, who didn't play his rookie year. Their center last year, Jake Rendell, was in, what do you think? He was 29 last year. He's going to be 30 this year. And he had only had 3 starts before the 2022 season. So I do, and they're not going to be at the top of the draft either. They're starting off in round 3 at the back end of round 3 to boot. So, thinking that they're going to be able to bring in a tackle that's going to start day one, I think that might be a little bit of wishful thinking, but we've seen this team have a lot of success with the guys in those mid rounds.
This is true. I mean, which kind of leads to the next 2 points, which is kind of sub points for a main point. It's about Kyle Shanahan.
Sure.
To me, he tempted fate twice when Brock Purdy got hurt. You got away with it the first time when you knew that the Philadelphia defensive line and pass rushers were coming, with their hair on fire. And in that one play, Tyler Kroft got away with it. But on the second play, where Brock got his elbow injured, he went with Tyler Kroft again, trying to block Hassan Reddick, who was coming in at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And, I don't believe he was trying to hurt Brock, but it happened.
No, I agree with you here. I will say that I don't think he attempted it twice. I think he just did it once because they were in that same formation 3 plays in a row. The first pass was a quick one, and he went out for a pass. Did Kroft, and McGlinchey was the one that picked up Reddick off the edge. But I agree with you. I didn't like that decision. I didn't like them going to. I did not like the 49ers going in that game thinking that they were going to run play action, just do their normal stuff, and that they were going to be able to block up Hassan Reddick with Tyler Kroft. That didn't make sense to me. And then you'd watch the Super Bowl, and you watch what Andy Reid in Kansas City did, and well, they didn't leave their tight end once to be one-on-one with Reddick. They always had help. Sometimes it looked like he did if you look at it just real quick on the TV copy, but then you watch the All-22 and you can even kind of see it on the TV where they're bringing he's blocking them, but they have help, right? Or sometimes it was just a chip, but they never allowed or they never forced their backup tight end to go one-on-one with Hassan Reddick. And for me, like I understand the thought process behind what the 49ers were doing in terms of trying to marry up the run blocking, like the run scheme with the play action. I get the thought process there. And one thing that I'll say is like, you've heard the term mansplaining, right? Where that's how I feel this whole thing was like, since that game against the Philadelphia Eagles, you've had everybody and their brother trying to mansplain why the 49ers, why Kyle Shanahan didn't screw up there. But they're wrong. And, Kansas City has showed in this game, and they've shown since Andy Reid took over in Kansas City. You can probably go back to Andy Reid's time in Philadelphia, and you can see that when you don't have to have your run blocking, your offensive linemen look exactly like what they would, on a pass action, on a play action, look exactly like what they look like on a run in order for it to be successful. For Kansas City on Sunday in the Super Bowl, they didn't do that. Their front, when they ran play action, was pass protecting. But you know what? They were still able to get the linebackers to step up. They were still, because the linebackers are reading so hard into the backfield with the run, that they're still stepping forward or having to honor it, because if they don't, you can then start to run the ball in different ways. And I think that speaks to partly why Andy Reid's quarterbacks during his time in Kansas City have stayed extremely healthy. He's been there for 10 years. Alex Smith was the starting quarterback for 5 years. He missed one game. Patrick Mahomes replaced him. He's been the quarterback for 5 years. He's missed 3 games. So we're talking about a total of 5 starts missed by your starting quarterbacks in 10 years. That's probably a little bit of an anomaly in the NFL. But when you compare that to what the 49ers haven't gone through a season. The only season the 49ers have gone through since Kyle Shanahan got here without injury as a quarterback was 2019. Every other season they've had at least one quarterback get knocked out that has started a game. That goes back to 2017. So, I don't know if it's a Kyle Shanahan problem or if it's a Kyle Shanahan offense problem kind of thing, where we have, had to do a little bit deeper dive into what's happened with what happened to the quarterbacks out in Miami, because, Mike McDaniel is a disciple of Kyle Shanahan, and he went through 3 quarterbacks himself this year. And the same thing out in New York, where you had Robert Saleh and LaFleur out there running that show, and they went through 3 quarterbacks as well. So I don't know if it's a Kyle Shanahan offense thing or exactly. I'd have to do a little bit more digging there, but I agree with you. The mistake against Philadelphia, when you lose 3 quarterbacks and 3 starting quarterbacks in a season, you have to ask why. regardless of whether you think it's on the coach or not. You have to be asking why, and you need to look at all 3 of those examples. You had a running quarterback, they got hurt. You had your starting quarterback get hurt because in the second quarterback with Jimmy Garoppolo get hurt because there was a blitz coming that you couldn't pick up, and the hot receiver wasn't in a position to turn around. And then last but not least, you have the one that we're talking about here with Brock Purdy. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on as this offseason goes through.
Yeah. And another thing, this kind of goes to the draft. Kyle has to stop drafting running backs in the 3rd round. They got to say, hey, Bobby Turner is finding these guys who are in the 4th round and later, and they're ending up being very serviceable backs. And if we look at the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, they had 6 drafted rookies that were starters. So I'm kind of getting frustrated on why Kyle is saying we need to redshirt all these rookies that are coming in. If the Super Bowl champion is playing 6 rookies and giving them lots of playing time and they're giving good contributions, why can't we have that? Because we can't just keep having this roster. I mean, all the future teams coming up with just a bunch of, like what the Rams did last year, have a bunch of top-heavy salaries and then a bunch of, mid-salary, low-salaried players.
Yeah, you need to have some flexibility there. I would say, and I don't think the 49ers are in a position where they need to use a 3rd round draft pick on a running back this year. They have a stable of running backs right now between Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, all that group. Ty Davis Price, Deebo Samuel is a wide back, if you want to call him that. They have a stable of running backs that they can turn to here. Jordan Mason is the other one that I missed there. So they have 4 guys who they're going to be bringing back. The one thing I'll say is that the offense with a high level running back like Christian McCaffrey is completely different than when you have some of these other guys. It's effective, it's efficient, they can do things, but when you have a guy like Christian McCaffrey who can do as many different things as he does, it completely changes the way that this offense is able to work. And in Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Shanahan finally found a guy who can do everything that you ask of a running back in his offense and do it at a very high level. So, they gave up a lot to get him, and I think it was worth it. And we'll see how that plays out next year.
Yep. 2 last points, and I'll let you go.
Yeah.
I think they still need to find a way to improve the secondary. I mean, if they bring back Jimmy Ward on a short-term deal, I can accept that. He played pretty well last season and didn't look like he's slowing down too badly. I think I wouldn't mind bringing back Deshaun Gibson also. I mean, he played well. Emmanuel Mosley, I would have give him a, maybe a one year, $2 million, contract and see if he gets a bigger offer somewhere else. I know he's rehabbing, so he may not get big money somewhere else, but he was playing pretty well before he got injured. But we still need to find ways to improve the secondary. I don't know if Ambry Thomas will get out of this sophomore slump. I'm not being on the field as often and find a way to contribute more.
Yeah, I think the 2 biggest spots right there, I think you're okay if they can't get Mosley back and they can't get Ward back, even if they can't get Gibson back. I think that's the spot regardless, is safety and nickel. I think they're okay on the outside. They have Travarius Ward on one side, and then I thought that Diamonor Lenore played at a very high level last year on the outside. I thought that he held down. He more than held his own. He wasn't Ambry Thomas 2.0 at all. He looked like a solid NFL quarterback when he was playing on the outside. So I think they'd be okay there if they can get Emmanuel Mosley back on a prove it kind of deal. I think that makes sense. I think it's going to be a little bit harder for them to do that with him than what they were able to do with Jason Verrett. Jason Verrett had a longer history of injuries than Emmanuel Mosley, which I think helped them out with being able to bring him back. And then we saw how that turned out with the injury there. At the back end though, with Tayshaun, if you asked me, should you re-sign Tayshaun Gibson or Jimmy Ward to play safety? I'm going with Tayshaun Gibson. He makes plays. I like Jimmy Ward as a slot corner at this point, but I'd rather have a guy like Tayshaun Gibson on the back end who actually gets interceptions and makes plays that way. Because what I'd heard was, and what we heard from the player in Jimmy Ward the offseason, a couple off seasons ago, was that the lack of turnovers was more to do with scheme. I don't think it was meant to do with scheme as much as it was the player being able to get there and make the plays. He's a very good. I thought he played really well from the slot, and part of the reason I thought he played so well in the slot was did a good job covering receivers to an extent, but he was really good in the run fits and was able to help them out in that area. So if it was between Gibson and Ward, I'm going with Gibson, and I think that's the way. Of those two, if one of them back, I do not foresee Jimmy Ward coming back just with the way everything went down at the end of last season.
Yeah, if I could see him going to someplace else, going to Houston and be a leader for them with D'Amico Ryans, getting his starting his coaching career down there.
Mm-hmm.
And the one last thing is you are a Golden State Warriors fan, I assume.
Sure.
I'm a Chicago Bulls fan since I live outside Chicago, and one of the decisions they made during the Jordan era was Doug Collins was the coach when they couldn't make it past Detroit, the bad boy Pistons teams.
Uh-huh.
And they hired Phil Jackson. And we know the rest is history with The Last Dance and everything else that's known. So Golden State, they evaluated Mark Jackson, who couldn't make it past, a certain round of the playoffs with a very good team. And their brass went and made the hard decision to let Mark, thank you for your contributions. We are moving, we're letting you go and bringing in Steve Kerr, and the rest is history, they say. Mm-hmm. So I would, if I'm the 49ers brass, I know this offseason is not doable, but you got to start evaluating if Kyle will at any point get this team to where they want to. I know they talk about we have this team that has all these players and we're just missing a quarterback, and that's great and fine, but that's another sore thumb that's been around when Kyle took over. You never found a starting quarterback when you had opportunities to possibly find one or get chances to get quarterbacks. You never know how they would have panned out.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's, it's a tough one for me because I think that Kyle Shanahan's a really good coach. There's a lot of things that I really like about him. And I do think that he's capable of winning a Super Bowl if he has the right quarterback. I did a show earlier this year with Larry Kruger on his channel where it was right after the Denver loss. And I said, if at that time, if Kyle Shanahan fails to win a Super Bowl in San Francisco, you're going to look back on that as his failing was due to the quarterback position. And I still believe that. And try not to, I don't know if I think that the injury issues at quarterback are his fault. I know that I pushed back against that when it was Trey Lance with the injury the first time. And I'd even, originally pushed back on if you had told me that Jimmy Garoppolo's injury this year was due to Kyle Shanahan or something to do with his scheme. Then you look at the Brock Purdy thing and you start to look at this, and it's three of them over the course of the year. And, one of the topics I was going to talk about was the O-line, and people are talking about the need to upgrade the offensive line, how the offensive line needs to be better. And quite frankly, I disagree. I think yes, you can make it better because they weren't number one in the league. So yeah, you could improve. But that offensive line was really good last year. It was the best offensive line, I think, in Kyle Shanahan's time here in San Francisco. And you look at the injuries to the starting quarterbacks, and none of them had to do with pass protection issues. The run, where we talked about the running play with Trey Lance. It was a unblocked guy because they slid down. There wasn't, because of the call, because of look at that Miami presented them, they blocked down on the left side, and that's where the blitz came from. And you look at the scheme there and the hot receiver, because Kyle Shanahan says that the blitz beaters are built into the offense. Well, the blitz beater was Deebo Samuel, and he never, by the time he got to where he was even close to turning, Jimmy Garoppolo had a guy in his face and was trying to get away. The only way that Garoppolo does anything better there is if he just throws the ball at the back of Deebo Samuel, throw it in the ground. But that just happens so quick that's tough to. I mean, that's a real bang bang when you watch it in full speed. And the same thing with the Purdy one. That's not even an offensive lineman. That's a tight end again. So, there's when you're having the number of injuries at that position, I think everything needs to be open to evaluation, and that would include Kyle Shanahan. And I think what you're saying and you're suggesting is maybe you give him another year, 2 tops, and if this continues, you make a move and go in a different direction. And I would say that's probably what's going to happen is if they don't win a Super Bowl in the next couple of years, you're going to be to year 9. That'd be 8 years of this with no Super Bowls. And I think at that point, that's when the trigger, they would pull the plug. I think you give him this year, and if they don't do it, he's on his last leg the year after that. And it's kind of one of those must win kind of things. It's just the way that I see it playing out for him right now.
Yeah, I kind of see that also. I mean, do I want to see Kyle fail? Of course I don't, but
sure.
I believe that the coaches from the Kyle Shanahan tree are the only coaches who've had multiple quarterbacks go down injured this year. I'm not saying that is that a trend or is that an indictment on Kyle Shanahan and his coaching methods. I don't know. I'm not smart. There are other people who are smarter than me and know more about football than I do that can make that observation and see if that is the case or not. I don't. But you did have 3 quarterbacks go down this year, and a dummy like me can see that. Hey, there's something going on. Not saying that Nor let you go. Thank you for taking my call. But his dad won with 2 elite quarterbacks, even though one was approaching the end of his career in John Elway. So to me, it always goes back to, do you have the elite quarterback? At the top 10 level quarterback. Because I think if he had Joe Burrow, I think he would. I think they would be a Super Bowl, at least a team that would be contending to win the Super Bowl, as an example.
I agree. And, George here, he says, Brock is our quarterback. I'm not sure if he was talking to us or if he's responding to somebody else. And I really feel like if Brock Purdy had stayed healthy in the NFC Championship game, I don't know if the 49ers win that game, but I feel at the same time, I feel like they would have. I don't know for sure, but I feel like I really like the 49ers' chances of winning that game eventually with Brock Purdy in there, because that's not a 21-7 game at halftime if Brock Purdy's in there. That's a 14-7 at worst going into the half, knowing you're getting the ball to start the second half kind of a game. And who knows how it would have played out. The 49ers were right there with the Eagles. We look back at the Super Bowl and how that game played out, and you look at what the 49ers defense did to Philadelphia over the first half of the game, first quarter and a half of that game. It wasn't until that last Eagles possession where they drove the ball down the field with a bunch of injuries or a bunch of penalties that things kind of turned. And I also think that some of that had to do with the 49ers defense believing they needed to get the ball back, and they needed to make a big play to keep the offense in good field position. Otherwise they weren't going to be able to win this game. And so, in that, because of that, they overplayed some things and then they end up getting called for it. So, you're talking about elite quarterbacks. Is Brock Purdy an elite quarterback? I'll say this. I'm working on an article for the Press Democrat, and I was looking at I went back to watch the beginning of the game against the Dolphins, because I wanted to see something with Jimmy Garoppolo, and then I just kind of let it keep running, and I started watching and the plays that he made off the bench, right off the bat, were high level plays. They're high level plays that we've never seen from a 49er quarterback, really. I think during the time that Kyle Shanahan's been here. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo's made some big plays. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't just he was making big plays with his arms. He was making big plays with his feet and his legs. And he just did that week in and week out for what, six games in the regular season and 2 in the postseason, so 8 weeks. So, I think Brock Purdy's really the guy, and part of the reason why I talk about Trey Lance, and like Ian Sharp says, Lance is going to have to make an early impression in training camp. Well, we don't know if Brock Purdy is even going to be available because of the injury, right? We won't know until next Thursday night the status of Brock Purdy, if he's even going to have a chance to come back before training camp's over with. So right now it's Trey Lance's team, so we'll see how it plays out.
Exactly. That's why you got to keep bringing in quarterbacks, because this is a violent game and never know. If I'm Brock, I go in the operation and I say, I'm not giving you a timetable when I'm coming back. I'm coming back when my arm's fully healthy and ready to go. If that's 6 months, great. If that's he has to miss the season, it is what it is. Hopefully the 49ers are playing for that and figure out, have multiple planes in the hopper just in case.
Yeah, and I think Brock Purdy is a smart guy, and I think he's in that camp where he wants to get back and play as soon as he can, but he's not going to play unless he's not going to step out there unless he's completely healthy, ready to go, and he's going to be able to handle it. So we'll see. It's going to be It's either going to be it'll be one of those two. I can almost guarantee it.
So I'm going to take an off-season break. So I'll also watch on occasion, but I'll take a little bit of time.
That's not allowed. That's not allowed. You gotta watch every show all the time.
I try my best. I can't do it when I'm on teleconferences for work.
No, I understand. I totally get it. I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to call. And it was a lot of fun. I know. I didn't have a guest host with me tonight, and it's almost like we did our own little show here for the first 30 minutes.
I appreciate you taking my call. So you have a nice rest of the week.
You too, and have a good rest, and get your batteries recharged, and come back and be ready to tell me what the 49ers should do.
I'm not that smart, so
that's all right. Hey, thank you so much for calling. Enjoy the Bulls. Hopefully they'll turn it around.
I was happy to have the Jordan years, so made the teenage years more bearable at times.
There you go. See, I wasn't out in Chicago. I was out here in the Bay Area, but I was still rooting for the Bulls and cheering on for Jordan, because that was incredible to watch even back in those days.
It was a circus. We'll just say that I have family who lives in a very wealthy suburb outside Chicago. At least someone in my family has money. Would have been nice if I could have some, but I'm not going to cry about it. But they took us for a tour of some of these big, like these big houses with all these gates and just a huge area. Like these houses have like 6,000 square feet or whatever. And they said, "Oh yeah, there's this big house over there with the big iron gate." I said, "Okay." And when it closes, there's a red 23 in the middle of a circle. I think, yeah, I think I know whose house that is.
There you go.
I was like, yeah. And then I had buddies who would see Scottie Pippen's car at the time going in downtown Chicago. I said, "Yeah, we think we know who has that car." So, but
that's the Jordan car.
No, that was the Pippen car. He had a.
Oh,
you remember in like The Last Dance, he had that Porsche. It said "To Trey" or "Air," or it was something about him and his nicknames or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I think I know whose vehicles those all belong. You can kind of take a wild guess and say, yeah, that person is driving that vehicle.
Gotcha. Yeah, so. Okay.
Thank you, Jack. You have a nice rest of the week.
I will. You too. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Bye. All right. So there we go. That was fun. That was a good call right there. Let's get into it. Another topic that I had and just wanted to share some thoughts on really quick was the Trey Lance interview that we heard today. Trey Lance did an interview with his quarterback coach, Quincy Avery. Lance has worked with Avery going back all the way to right after he played his last game at North Dakota State. If you remember back in 2020 with the COVID year, the FCS division of NCAA football, they moved their season to the spring instead of in the fall. And so Lance only played the one exhibition game, and other than that, he was done. And so in 2020, when without anywhere to play, he went and worked out with Quincy Avery out in Atlanta and spent a lot of time out there. And they're doing a podcast that he still works with Trey Lance, and the topic of arm fatigue came up, and what do you know? It wasn't. It was actually true what they're saying. And I remember at the time I didn't say that it wasn't true. I said that there was something to it. And part of the reason that I said that there was something to it is because it wasn't just one reporter that was saying it. Mike Silver and Colin Cowherd were the first to mention it on a show together, but there were things that people were saying about Trey Lance that you could tell that there was something going on. And so, for me, it goes back to it went back even to an interview from Adam Debu, who is a quarterback guru of his own right, out down in Southern California, that worked with Trey Lance, and he was on KNBR, and he was talking about how they needed to um, go ahead and build up his arm and make it so that he would be ready to go when it came time. They needed to build up some they need to build that arm up so that it would withstand the off season. I don't remember exactly what was said. Let me pull it up here just a second. I'll tell you exactly what he said. I had tweeted this back during this whole thing, and basically what it was Adam Debu is saying that building up Trey Lance's arm to have enough equity to withstand training camp and OTAs from a pitch count and performance standpoint has been a focus of his training this offseason. And that's during that offseason going from the 2021 rookie season into 2022. And what that tells me is that there was some truth to the fact that there was some concern around that arm. And what you heard from Trey Lance today in that interview was there was an issue with his arm. It was tired, and the tiredness in the arm came from the length of time that it was taking for him to, he was out for 20 months. And over that time, he was throwing on a daily basis and just throwing it so often, tired him out. And that was the issue. And my whole thought on it was it was good to get a little bit of clarification around it. It was good to see that, I think we can maybe put this to bed now. Did Trey Lance have arm fatigue? Yes. Is it a problem that's chronic for Trey Lance? I would say the answer to that is likely no. And especially when you look at it this year, right? He's hasn't really. He's thrown the ball a little bit. Since the injury, we've seen video of him throwing the ball during warmups at games and so on. So he's throwing the ball, and he talked even today on the show that he did with Avery about throwing the ball, getting out there and throwing it and going through his stuff out there. I just feel like now that one time period where he was doing it all the time so often is past him now. And I don't think we're going to see that issue moving forward with Trey Lance. It was something that was there, and for me, like I said, it's good to have it out there. It's good to know that the reporting was accurate. You don't report in the NFL for 20 plus years, maybe even going on to 30, if you are making stuff up. There's something to it. Otherwise, you don't put that out there. The guys that do it at a high level, in terms of the reporters, you don't put it out there. And that's one of the reasons why when I talked about it, I'm just a newbie. So I don't have the inside information. I'm just gathering from outside sources and, reporting what I thought between what Mike Silver was saying and then between what other folks were saying on interviews and things like that. You could tell that there was some truth to it. And it was accurate, and Trey Lance and his put that out there today, and it's good to get that past us. Like I said, Trey Lance right now, when you look at Lance going into this offseason right now, as it is today, Trey Lance is the only quarterback that the 49ers will have when they hit OTAs during shortly after the draft. So look at sometime in May, beginning of June, you'll see OTA start. Trey Lance is going to be the quarterback. He's going to have a chance to go out there and show what he can do. And depending on what happens with Brock Purdy, there may or may not be a quarterback competition. Just depends on if Brock Purdy's even able to get out there because of the shoulder surgery. So, good news on Lance is that he expects to be cleared and ready to go in May, and that's positive news for the 49ers. And I agree with this from Jay Mill that Brock looked better than both Trey and Jimmy. I agree. There were things that he did that we have not seen from Trey Lance as a member of the 49ers. His ability to get the ball out repeatedly to beat the blitz. Trey Lance can make what we've seen from Trey Lance is he makes plays, right? Trey Lance makes plays, but he doesn't make them routinely. And that's the difference. And that's what separates Trey Lance, or separate, in my opinion, the difference between Trey Lance, what I saw of him in training camp, and what we saw a little bit of him his rookie season, and what we saw of Brock Purdy in his time, was Brock Purdy did it week in and week out. Every time he touched the field, he was making these plays. With Trey Lance, it was a little more up and down. And I think, that's to be expected a little bit because of his age and because of his lack of playing time at North Dakota State. And I think that is the number one thing that he needs to be able to improve on. He needs to be consistent. If Trey Lance can be consistent and he can be repetitive over and over and over again, and he can show that he can beat the blitzes repeatedly, he shows that he can make the quick throws and do the off balance throws and all those kind of things that we saw from Brock Purdy, he'll be fine. But we haven't seen it yet. We just haven't seen it yet. And between what we've seen of him in games and what we've seen of him in practice, what I've seen of him in practice, there's just a lack of consistency there. He has a big arm. He's got athleticism. If you put the two together and you watch the two from an athletic standpoint, I think it'd be hard to go against Trey Lance. But when you watch them play quarterback, Brock Purdy is a little bit more efficient. So we'll see the direction that this takes as we get going here. Ecam says the problem is that the franchise didn't use the Bill Parcells approach for drafting quarterbacks when they drafted Trey. Well, a lot of people don't, and that part of that, I believe one of the big pieces of the Bill Parcells approach to drafting quarterbacks is they need to be 4-year starters in college, or have played for 4 years in college. Maybe not 4-year starters, but they played. They were in college for 4 years, and that's definitely something that helped out. With Brock Purdy and helped him be able to step into hit the starting quarterback role the way that he did. I think the other part with Brock Purdy that was so impressive is the fact that this is a guy who throughout training camp never took a snap with the starters. Heck, I don't even remember him ever taking a snap with the backups. He was always pretty much working with the threes. He might have taken a few snaps with the backups. Minnesota, right? Minnesota, they started Nate Sudfeld in that game, and then Brock Purdy, him and Purdy rotated every series. But beyond that, and he never took reps with the stars. He might have taken some reps during the regular season after Lance got hurt and he became the backup. But usually that doesn't even happen in regular season practices at the NFL level. So for him to step in against Miami and for there to be no fall off was clutch, was big time, and he did it repeatedly. So I think there's a lot of people in that locker room that believe in him. I think they'd believe in Trey Lance too if he was the guy that has to come out and play, and if he's able to show that he's got it, that they would believe in Trey Lance too. So 49ers are in a really good situation here. I think with two young quarterbacks, they just need to get pretty healthy, and with those two guys, and you bring in a veteran off the street to a free agent, bring him in to kind of compete for that third spot. I think you're going to be in a good spot. You could be in a really good spot if you're the 49ers. A couple other things I already touched on when I had Ekim on the show. We went through the topic that I wanted to talk about as far as the O-line injuries. But other news that happened today is the 49ers made a hire. They lost Bobby Slowick to Houston. He went out to Houston to join D'Amico Ryan's staff as the offensive coordinator there. He had been the 49ers passing game quarterback last year. They went out this today and they hired Clint Kubiak. That name should sound familiar to you. Gary Kubiak, a former backup quarterback to John Elway with the Denver Broncos back in the 80s. Became a offensive coordinator, actually worked with the 49ers. He was the quarterbacks coach under Mike Shanahan when Shanahan was the offensive coordinator here in San Francisco. Went on to become an offensive coordinator in different places, and eventually the head coach of the Houston Texans, and he bounced around a bunch of things after that. After his time as the head coach ran out, Clint Kubiak comes in, and he'll be he doesn't have a title as far as the report yet. Doesn't say that, didn't give a title, but he's going to be, I would expect that he's going to be the passing game coordinator. His brother, Clay Kubiak, was with the 49ers last year as the assistant quarterbacks coach. He was assisting Brian Griese as quarterbacks coach for the 49ers. The two of them did a very good job of coaching up the quarterbacks. I think that's a big reason why we saw the play from the quarterback position be so good this season, even with all the turnover. And so, Kubiak has been an offensive coordinator in the past. He was an offensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings back in 2019, I believe it was. Actually, he was the quarterbacks coach in Minnesota in 2019. He was their offensive coordinator in 2021. They had a top 12 offense that season in 2021 with Kubiak calling the shots. And then just this past season, Kubiak was with the Denver Broncos. He had started as their passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach, transitioned into play calling duties in week 11. Had some success there as well. The team, I think, went from scoring around 12 points a game to 19, something like that was the number I saw earlier today. So this is a guy who I think is pretty well versed in what Kyle Shanahan wants to do at the quarterback position and with the offense. And it's a good transition from Bobby Slowick to Kubiak. The biggest thing with the 49ers when it comes to their offense and the coaching staff on the offense is the guy that runs it, Kyle Shanahan. As long as he's there, the offense is going to be in his vision anyway. And that's one of the benefits of having your head coach be an offensive guy. You can lose coordinators. You can lose some position coaches, but you always have your offense in place. And defensive coordinators, I think, are a little bit easier to replace than the offensive guys. And we've seen that here in San Francisco. They've been very good with the turnover with their defensive coordinators. So Clint Kubiak joining the 49ers today, according to reports from Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network. Also, the other one that I wanted to talk about, one other bit of news, and this came down a couple of days ago. Marcelino McCurry-Ball, the linebacker who was one of the standouts during training camp last offseason. He was an undrafted rookie free agent. I believe he was out of Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. And he had a really good preseason. He runs like a 4.5 140, around the ball quite a bit, had an interception in one of the early preseason games. Just an all-around really good player. The 49ers went out, they signed him to a one-year contract this week. That's a nice signing for the 49ers. You look at their depth at the linebacker position, and that's a spot where he fits in really nice for the 49ers. Does Marcelino McCurry-Ball. They have, your top two guys. That's simple. You're going to have Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. Those are your top two. Behind that, you have Oren Burks. He's coming back. He's special teams aide. He's also a pretty good linebacker in his own right. You have Curtis Robinson there as well. And we'll see what they decide to do with Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. Flanagan-Fowles is a restricted free agent, so the 49ers could tender him and lock him up, or force a team to give them compensation if they were to sign him away, or they could come to an extension with him without having to tender him. So looking at the cap numbers to do the tenders, I don't think the 49ers are going to tender him. I think they're going to try to extend him without it. But regardless, that linebacker room for the 49ers right now, as it stands, looks pretty good. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Warren Burks, all three made the team last year, along with Curtis Robinson. Curtis Robinson out of Stanford, more of a special teams guy. We haven't really seen him play much on the defensive side. He dealt with injuries throughout the year last year, so we didn't really get a chance to see him in 2022. But he'll be back this season. And then your fifth guy right now is Marcelino McCurry-Ball, who they just re-signed. So the 49ers linebacker room, one of the best, if not the best in the NFL, with Warner and Greenlaw. And then you have Burks, Robinson, McCurry-Ball at that third spot. And we'll see how that plays out. Seattle says, is Aziz officially out? Well, he's not officially out. But he's a free agent. When it comes to what it will cost the 49ers to bring him back, I don't think that's a deal that they do, given the depth that they have at that position. Ekim asked Jack, does Kinlaw get the fifth-year option? The answer to that's no. They're not going to give him the fifth-year option. He hasn't shown him anything to be worth that number, which I think is somewhere around $14 million or something like that. Javon Kinlaw hasn't done anything to deserve that kind of a contract yet. I think they declined the fifth-year option on Javon Kinlaw, let him play it out, and then go from there to see what kind of contract that he'd be up for after 2023 is over with, because that's when he'll be done. So, the 49ers right now, I think are, you look at this roster, and I've seen a lot of people talking about how they need to improve. And the 49ers haven't missed the Super Bowl the last 2 years because of anything on their roster other than quarterback play. Whether it's not having a quarterback in the championship game this year, or if it's Jimmy Garoppolo missing wide open receivers down in Los Angeles the year before. They have a Super Bowl. They have a very good roster. I think a Super Bowl worthy roster if they can keep their quarterback healthy. You look at it. 16 of the 22 starters between offensive defense returning. Only you're losing 2 off of the offense, 4 off of the defense. This is, I think, a very good team. Last year, remember before the season, the talk was that they were minus the quarterback. If you took the quarterback out of the equation, they were the number 1 or 2 best teams in the league. I don't see them falling off from that spot. I think that they're still up there, like I said, with so many of their own guys returning. So good news for the 49ers in that respect. So we'll see how this plays out. Like I said, we are in the silly season now of the NFL, at least especially for this next month. At the free agency period will be opening on March 15th. So between now and then, there's going to be lots of rumors to talk about, which always makes it fun at this time of year. There'll be some discussion still of things from the previous season that as we look forward, we're going to also be able to look back at 2022 and cover some of those things as well to continue on. So the next big thing for the 49ers, I'm sure they do a great job of giving us content and breaking news on a regular basis. But the next major bit of news, I think, for the 49ers comes up next Thursday. And that's the surgery for Brock Purdy. I believe that's next Thursday. Actually, it's going to be next Wednesday, the 22nd, which would be next Wednesday. So by a week from today, we're going to know the status of Brock Purdy, which will give us a better idea of when to expect him back on the field. So keep it locked in here to the channel. Got lots of things in the works here at the Jackhammer channel as we go through this offseason. The silly season for the NFL, it's time for me to start looking around and maybe restructuring my lineup a little bit. All the familiar voices that you're used to are still going to be here, but there's going to be a few others that we're going to be adding as well. Starting tomorrow, I'll have Jordan Elliott on tomorrow at noon. So keep it locked in here to the channel for my discussion with Jordan. He does a great job over at Niners Nation. He's done some freelance stuff with some other outlets as well. So make sure you tune in. Keep it locked in here to the Jackhammer channel. Before you log off tonight out of this, please make sure you hit that like button. The like buttons are the biggest thing because those are the ones that would allow you. The more likes that these shows get, the more they get pushed out to other folks as something that they'd be interested in looking at. So I ask you to please hit that like button, and then also hit the subscribe button. When you hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification so you get notified every time we go live or every time we post new content. I will be making sure to put out videos as things happen as often as possible. Sometimes there's some other things that get in the way of being able to go live right away or get that out there. But I'll be doing my best to make sure that I get you all the breaking news as it happens on the San Francisco 49ers this offseason and going into 2023. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thanks everybody who watched this live. Thank you everybody who's watching this off after the original show. Appreciate everybody who takes the time to watch the content. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your evening. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.